Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 5 Tips and Tricks for Careers in Athletics. I'm your host, Dr. Morey Mossovitz, with my favorite co-host of all time, Jen Albanese.
Hello.
Jen, we're back.
I know we are back. I love when you say I'm your favorite, like you had other co-hosts before me.
No, not just my co-host, of any co-host of all things.
Oh my God. Well, now I feel really special. Thank you.
Not just to this podcast, to anything. So like Vanna White, you're beating Vanna White. You're beating like all those. There you go.
Well, I try to have a different top every day, so I am beating Vanna White. So there we go.
There you go.
So what's going on? Another podcast, Morey.
I know. We've had such great guests. I mean, we've been doing some amazing things lately, and just like I've now started talking in normal conversations with people, citing things that we've talked about with our guests lately. So I feel like that means it's been very successful.
Like we've learned so much. It's been great conversations, and the tips are all different. That was the other thing I was excited about. I thought we would have some repeat tips, and they really have been different and so great. So
yeah, so even if they're similar, there's like a slight difference that relates to that person. And hearing everybody's stories, like there's been some surprises about people that we've known for a long time.
Like so many, like, oh, I didn't know that about you, which is great.
Yeah, it's been great.
Learn something new every day, right, Morey? Right?
Exactly. So was prepping for this, and the person that we have on our podcast today is like a computer IT technical, like probably the smartest person that you and I know.
He's a genius. Yeah.
And it made me think about like all of our IT support that we've ever had, and the idea of why the first thing everyone asks you if you've done is turn off your computer. Every IT person we've ever had will be like, did you turn off your computer? And you'd be like, only 8 times before I contacted you.
Right. I've also thrown it against the wall and, tried to do as million things to it. But
there's like a sense of
the answer first.
Yeah. It's like a sense of disbelief. Like, well, let's try it again. Like it's going to change it.
Then, it's that one time that it actually works. And you're like, what? Like I just did the exact same thing 3 minutes ago, and now just because you're standing here and you restart the computer, it works. Like, of course, it's just. And
then they're gonna make you think like you're a total idiot because you.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
It's like when you bring your stuff to like the Geek Squad, like at a tech store, and you're like, "Here, help me," and they just look at it and it works, and you're like, "Wait, what? Like,
what is going on?" My problem is though that they're still like, "Did you turn it on and off?" And like your computer's like on fire in front of them, and they're like, "Maybe did you turn it on and off?" Or like, I don't think that's the problem.
That's not going to solve this problem here, not at all.
There's smoke coming out of it. I think it's more of like a hardware thing, and like, oh, well, turn it on and off.
It's like making a noise. Like it sounds like there's a monster inside of it. Oh, technology is the best. It's like when you see like the spinning wheel of death. That's what we used to say in our office. Yeah. Like when something was like buffering or whatever, you're like, oh, your day's over. Nothing you can do now. It's just your computer.
And you want to watch a Netflix show, and then that thing just keeps twirling over and over and over again. And you like want to like scream at your router.
Yeah. And you're like, what is going on? You restart it. It doesn't work. But always the answer from every IT person is just restart your computer. Turn it on and off.
Do you think Jeff has like service where he never has to like buffer anything? Like he's
he's a genius. He should never have to wait for buffering. We should ask him that question. We should be like, so after all your tips and tricks, we have a question. Is buffering real, or is it just to get people upset?
Or when you're in IT school, do they train you to tell everyone to turn your computer on and off?
Is that like the first line of defense?
Because he is a professor in the School of Technology, and I wonder if that's like a part of the class. Is they're like, okay, the first question you must ask, like a doctor or something, is, did you turn your computer on and off?
It's like, how are you feeling today?
Yeah.
Did you turn your computer on and off? I know.
Well,
so these are all the things we're going to write down and ask Jeff.
There are separate tips and tricks just for us to survive in technology.
Really, it's for anybody to survive in technology. So.
Well, awesome. We're very excited to have Jeff coming up. We look forward to that, and we'll see everyone after this break. If you're enjoying this podcast, please follow us on your favorite podcast streaming service. The 5 Tips and Tricks podcast is a part of Athletic Career Consulting, a group focused on educating and guiding high school and college students looking towards careers in athletics. To find out more, go to our website at www.athcareer.com. That's ATHCAREER.
Welcome back, everybody. And we have our guest with us today. Morey, would you like to introduce him?
Absolutely, really excited. Today's guest is a super fan and enthusiast of sports and turned his passion into a leading business in athletics. He is a creator, innovator, and leader in the world of websites and digital space in sports. In 2001, he founded SIDEARM, which became the leading digital fan engagement platform for the biggest brands in athletics and sports. In 2014, he sold SIDEARM to Learfield, where he stayed on as to operate SIDEARM as well as become Learfield's executive vice president of digital. He recently left SIDEARM and is now in a role helping his alma mater as a senior vice president for digital transformation and chief digital officer. We are so excited to have Jeff Rubin join us today. Welcome, Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
Morey, Jen, thanks for having me. Exciting.
Yeah.
Welcome. Exciting for you. Congratulations on the new role.
Oh, thank you. You know, change is good. Change is good.
And we have the best. You are the best. So at what you do, Jeff. So
Yeah, most people don't realize if you're looking at a website in college sports, but maybe even sports altogether, Jeff's hand has been touched that website in some way or another. So it's pretty amazing what you've done.
It really is unbelievable. Pinch yourself sometimes. I think, you know, starting SIDEARM, the goal was always to grow it and to be a leader. But to have over 95% of the D1 market at one point was unbelievable, and have 90% of all NCAA schools
that's incredible.
It is incredible. It really is. It's a testament to the team and the product, and you know, really excited for SIDEARM and what they have in their future.
That's awesome.
They're a great group to work with, too.
They are a good group to work with. So as a person that's been an innovator in sports, we'd really like to give some of your tips and tricks to those people that are out there that might be interested in doing some of the things that you've done or things just in the world of sports. So why don't you start off with your first tip or trick?
Yeah, you know, and I think a lot of mine, you may be able to apply to other industries, but I'm going to explain why they're so important to sports themselves. And so the first one is really knowing the industry. And I know that may sound cliche or weak, but look, I've spent 28 years in the college sports industry and still wake up every morning feeling like I don't understand what is happening, or what's going on.
Recently.
Yeah, exactly. and so, you know, for me, it's waking up every day and putting aside time, like intentional time, to read the journals, read the newsletters, listen to the podcasts, talk to others, and strive to just stay on top of all this. And look, it's in the world that we're living in today, it's even more complex, but I'd even say 3-4 years ago, it was still challenging, right? You still have, what does it mean with conference realignment? Well, if you don't understand the business of sport, especially college sport, you're going to have a real tough time succeeding. Understanding the hierarchy in the roles within college sport is really, really important, right? Everyone knows the athletic director, and then people kind of know the position they want to go into, but do they know how everything else operates? And that's what I mean by studying the industry. You can certainly go deeper and say, you know, today it's studying sports wagering, and it's studying NIL, and it's studying the transfer portal, and it's studying the legal issues against the NCAA. And that is also really important to be educated. I think, you know, people, when they hire you, they're not just hiring you for what you do, but they're hiring you for who you are and what you can bring to an organization. And so that to me is understanding this industry. And you can limit yourself to just college, and that could be okay. It's certainly a big enough industry to look at college sports. But, you know, college is oftentimes getting ideas from professional sports, whether that be the ones that, you know, roll off the tip of your tongue like the NFL, but maybe it's also the National Women's Soccer League, NWSL, or maybe it's the WNBA today, or the PGA or NASCAR. or international sports and FIFA. And so I think that's, to me, understanding what others are doing and trying to figure out, how do I not make the same mistakes others are doing, but how do we capitalize, or think about, I'll read these headlines and then think about, how do I apply this to Syracuse University, right? How do I apply this to what we are doing? And whether that's in revenue generation, whether that could be even in fan engagement in some way, shape, or form, whether that could be more strategic. And for SIDEARM, how do we rethink about rosters, right? And I know that sounds so simple, but 20 plus years ago when I started the company, a student athlete belonged to a team and that team belonged to a college. And it was the oddity for somebody to transfer. It happened, but it was rare. Well, what happens when all of a sudden that rarity becomes normalcy? And now it's normal for people to transfer. Well, now all of a sudden, when somebody moves from one school to another, the schools are looking for that information to come with them. They want the stats, they want the photos, they want the bio. SIDEARM, we weren't set up that way, right? It was set up where a player belonged to a roster. That roster belonged to a school. You couldn't move it around. So what I'm talking about is really, even from the system challenges, there's technical challenges, thinking about how college athletics is evolving and how your systems need to evolve along with that. And look, we saw this change coming, several years ago, but it's at what point are you actually then putting, it's one thing strategizing and another thing of executing. Right. And I think there's a big gap sometimes between strategy and execution, where we can come up with ideas and you're like, yeah, AI sounds really good, but we'll just kind of sit back, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh gosh, all our peers are behind us. Or in SIDEARM's case, oh gosh, maybe we really should have executed a few years ago, because now we're something that we were ahead of 3-4 years ago is now something where our clients are saying, why haven't you done this? Right. And that becomes problematic.
Yeah. I mean, just the idea, and probably what has made you so successful, is you're willing to think and look at all sides. And that it seems like that's a trend that we've talked through a lot of people that we've, been successful, that we've been on the podcast, is that you can't close your mind. You have to be willing to open up and try and find as much information as possible. And then where are you going to put that information?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Look, there's a reason why, 28 years ago, almost, or I guess 24 years ago, I started going to the Syracuse games and asking to sit in the press box and asking to sit courtside. And yeah, there's a part of you that's a fan. You'll always be a fan doing it. But the real part was watching and observing and saying, how can I make this better? How can I make this easier for the folks that are doing their jobs? You can't do that sitting in a boardroom or around a conference table, right? When you see the hustle of college athletics and the speed in which we're operating, and I don't mean the speed on the field or the court, I mean the speed of what's going around the game. That's something you can't understand unless you're a part of it, and then trying to come up with strategic solutions for that. And so, yeah, it's just immersing yourself in the industry itself, and whether that's through learning, or in my case, I was fortunate to be here in Syracuse and invited to the press box and invited to the court to be able to say, gosh, why are they doing it like this? And in the early days, there was a lot of that. Right? I mean, it was, oh my gosh, like we're passing around pieces of paper with stats on it. Right. Or, the way we're doing photos or whatever it may be, you can begin to strategize, come up with ideas, try them, and then, hopefully monetize them.
Awesome.
Yeah. So good. All right, Jeff, what do you got for tip number 2?
So tip number 2 is kind of playing off tip number 1. Is if I stress that you need to know about sports, that you need to know about this industry, that you need to immerse yourself. The other is you need to immerse yourself in your profession, whatever that might be. And so, and I'll give a handful of examples like this. And some of this could end up being just maybe slightly controversial, because what I mean is professions change, they evolve over time. And so one is, what you were hired for today does not necessarily mean is that's what you will be doing a year from now, 2 years from now.
Yeah.
And that's hard on some people, right? Some people have struggled with embrace change. They get set, and here's the way that I've done it. This is the way I always do it. And what I'm saying is that is a pure success for failure,
Right.
Or pure recipe for failure. You need to study the profession, right? And the same way as a leader, whether I was president of a company or executive vice president, whatever the title may be, is I'm studying leadership. Right. And because I want to become a better leader, I can't pretend the way I came in is just the way it's going to be and I know everything. Absolutely not. And so my first one was studying the industry, and now it's studying the profession. Jen, you're in marketing, right? Mm-hmm. Look at how marketing has evolved, right? When 28 years ago, when I started, it was the advertisements were on like this rotation on the video boards, right? And everything had to be taped together and lined up, and hope to God it didn't go. And then we got into to video boards, and then you get into targeting audience and how you target those audiences and data collection. That it changes, in how we go from, well, we're going to reach fans via email to we're going to reach fans via text, we're going to reach fans via push notification. Yeah. All this becomes important of studying marketing, right? And sports information is another one, right? SIDEARM, a lot of people may not realize, but SIDEARM is an acronym, right? It stands for Sports Information Distribution Engine with Archive and Records Management, right? So Sports Information Distribution Engine, Archive and Records Management. And that's because we got our start with sports information, right? We were a sports information distribution platform. Again, when I've looked at that industry, and these are people who are near and dear to my heart, and who helped make SIDEARM who it is today, that industry has changed. When I started, it was very much about pregame, postgame stories, faxing those stories.
So
copying them on a copy machine and putting them in a file.
Yes.
Putting them in an envelope and mailing them.
Absolutely. And then getting it to the media, right? And your main audience at that point was the media, right? That was your audience because you wanted them to write about it in their papers. The next day, you wanted them to talk about it on their radio shows the next day. So you had to make sure you got that information over to them. Gosh, how that has changed.
Yeah.
Right? And so certainly, you come in and you start looking, well, how sports information, how are we distributing content? Well, instead of distributing it via fax, we're distributing it via website. Well, then what happens? Well, then Google and others come in and they basically say, well, why do we even have to go to the website? Because you can just search, what's the score, and it's going to come up in Google's results. In fact, if somebody wants to know about Kyle McCord, the quarterback at Syracuse, one of the last places they need to go is Cuse.com. And I mean that I mean that respectfully, but it's because everybody has written about Kyle McCord, right? And so you can go to Yahoo Sports and you can go to ESPN and you can go to Barstool and Bleacher Report. You can find everything you want on Kyle McCord. So the point is then what becomes a website, right? How do you look at your profession to be able to say, what is that next evolution where you're still adding value? And by the way, there's tremendous value in sports information. It's just changed. It's changed from being able to write a pre and post game story, which now I call, and again, people might get upset with me for this, but I call it like the necessary evil.
Right.
You've got to have it because it's like this historical significance that needs to be there.
Keep it for your records, more or less.
That's right.
Archive type of thing.
No, I don't want to say nobody. Very few people look at it.
Right.
Very few.
Right.
And so then what does become the strategic value of sports information? Well, how does sports information lead more into revenue generation, right? Again, 28 years ago, Jay Krauthimmel was our athletic director at Syracuse. he wasn't whining and dining folks at games. That wasn't how you did things. It was very different. And today this is a business. This is about driving revenue. It's about monetizing at every level of your organization. And so how do we get sports information folks to say, how are we developing content that people want to read in today's world, which is we don't have long attention spans. We want bite-sized information. We want photos. We want video. And how do you monetize that audience? And I think the ones that have been able to do that are the ones that will succeed and drive value and move through an organization in the future. And I think the ones that are still like, hey, but we've got to write about the pre and post game story. That's hard. Yeah. That's hard because, and what I'm going to say is, why do you even have to write about that today with AI?
Right.
And so, a couple months ago, I was hopping on a plane to a conference and I took one of the Syracuse men's basketball box scores and asked ChatGPT to write me a post-game story just based on it. And I'd say it got like 70% where I was like 70% there. And then it's conversational. So I went back to ChatGPT and said, hey, one of the things you missed was how we had this, 22-point lead and then it got shrank to 3. Like you didn't talk about that. Oh gosh, I missed that. Sorry. And it rewrites it. And so now all of a sudden I've got this post-game story in a matter of 1.5 minutes that I wrote when I was 30,000 feet in the air on an airplane. That is going to be the future. And so you've got two options. One is either waiting for that to happen and saying, okay, my job will be eliminated, or two, I will retire and through attrition, my job will be eliminated. Right. Or three, cool, this aspect of my job is no longer relevant. And so now let's study what sports information means in 2024 and beyond.
Yeah, be the one to develop what it means. Be that one at the start.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's awesome. And so many people, I mean, Jeff, you put it in such an interesting way because so many people wouldn't understand it unless you explained it that way, that they just think it's the way it always has been. It's not going to be that way.
Yeah.
It won't be for anybody. And it hasn't been for John Wildhack as the athletic director of Syracuse University or any other athletic director at any other university. Unless you're a brand new AD, this isn't what you signed up for.
Exactly.
And so your options are, quit or figure out how you're going to move forward. And you've got to study this. You've got to study it. You've got to be an expert in your profession. And that is going to evolve no matter what you do, no matter compliance,
everything.
I mean, I even, equipment and managing anything is going to evolve. And what I'm saying, if you want to excel, be part of that evolution and be part of the, studying it. So you're coming up with those solutions.
Awesome. Okay. Tip number 3.
So tip number 3 is being strategic. And so it's not just being a doer, which I think a lot of people come in, and again, nothing wrong with this. There's a level of, we need people to do things. But what I'm saying, if you want to excel, if you want to move up within athletics, college athletics or beyond, you've got to be recognized. And the chances of you being recognized because of how many press releases you've written or how well you've handled on-court events or how many people we've graduated through compliance, that's just doing your job, right? That's just doing your job. But when you're recognized, it's because you're a strategic thinker. Right. And people begin to recognize that you have opinions. And so now there is this balance between being strategic and being annoying, right? Okay. And being like, hey, you want to be strategic, but you also don't want to be the I know it all and this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
And that is a balance. I don't know how you say it other than it's this socially, being socially aware of your audience and who you're talking to. And when somebody, if the chancellor asked me, hey, Jeff, what's your view on the future of college athletics? I better have an opinion.
Right.
I better have an opinion on that. May not be the opinion he goes with, but I should have an opinion. Now, if I start calling the chancellor every week and saying, here, you're doing this wrong,
Right.
here's what you should be doing in college athletics, now that becomes annoying, right?
Well, I think it's humility. Like, I think, and that's what I think you've always been really great at. Like, it's humility to say, well, I have an idea and I want to work on that idea, but that doesn't mean it's the absolute be all end all idea or I know everything, but we can work together on it. And like that's the part to me that I think sometimes, especially people are really young and they think they know a lot. They don't have that humility part to say, hey, how do we do this?
It's being open to like other people's perspectives and things that you might not have thought about. Like, you know, you're thinking from one place, somebody else is thinking from a different side of things. So being open to that too is a key, I think, when you're trying to be a better leader and be able to be strategic.
You're both exactly right. And I think it's knowledge is powerful. Information is powerful. And what you always got to remember is there's always people that know more than you.
Yeah.
And so to think that I know more than John Wildhack, who's sitting in athletic director meetings with all the other ACC folks, or to think that I know more of the future of the NCAA when Charlie Baker is sitting around the table with conference commissioners, that's absurd, right? And so my strategic value is limited by the knowledge or the information that I necessarily have, right? And so, but with that said, maybe I'm not necessarily going to have the exact answer for the future of the NCAA or the exact answer of the future of conferences or college football. But I should be able to have strategic value within the future of technology within college athletics.
Right.
And I think that I've earned some respect in those areas to say, hey, like what my opinion carries some weight.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't mean I'm going to get it right all the time, but carries some weight. And so, but that's because it's the strategic thinking, right? If SIDEARM just sat back and we launched a product like some of our competitors did, and then you're not adding to it, you're not thinking strategically.
Yeah.
At some point in time, that just becomes vaporware. It becomes, tech debt, and you're behind. That doesn't necessarily mean every time you get up to the plate, you're going to hit a home run.
Right.
And look, you talk about humility, right? I used to think I had some really good ideas, and a year or two later after investment, you realize it was really a strikeout. Right. And that's hard. That doesn't mean you can't get back to the plate and try again. Right now, if you keep striking out, you're of no value. You keep striking out, then you'll find your way to a new role or new job. But I think if you're willing to take some risks and you have some strategic thoughts and you can get some energy and get folks behind it, you're going to get recognized, right? I'm going to use another example of building dorms, right? There's a blueprint for how we've built dorms for 50, 100 years on a campus. Does that mean that new dorms that we're going to build in 2025 and 2026 should use that same blueprint? And the answer is no, it shouldn't.
No, right.
But there's people that want it to because it's what's comfortable. And what I'm saying is those are the people that are just comfortable in their job. They're the doers. And what I'm saying is you need somebody with strategy to come in and say, have we thought about digital keys? Have we thought about monitoring laundry remotely? Have we thought about, consumers of 2025 and 26? And again, like I said, attach this to college athletics and however you want. But if you're not studying the profession and studying the industry, you will not be strategic and you will be a doer. And I've got to be careful because there's nothing wrong with being a doer. There's people who are very content coming into a job, doing their job, coming in at, whatever, clocking in, clocking out, getting their, 3% raise every year and calling it a career. That's okay. But I think what you're asking in this podcast is like, how do you grow within this industry?
You don't want to stop progress. That's when it becomes a problem.
You want to challenge yourself and get better. You don't want to stay stagnant in anything. So
yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay, Jeff, next one. What do we got?
It's four, Morey.
So number four. Look, I've done college athletics for 28 years. So what I don't know is how this relates to other industries, but I do know this relates to college sports, which is this is a relationship business.
Yeah.
my early relationships were with Sue Edson, were with Mike Veely, were with Jay Kraut-Hamill, was with Pete Moore. And then they introduced me to Bob Beretta, who was at Army and then over at Lemoyne.
Yeah.
And Bob introduced me to folks at a different school, got me into the NCAA. And relationships are critical in life. But in college sports, this is a relationship business.
Yeah.
And people move around. But the more that you have built genuine, it's not like, what can they do for me? It's what can I do for them? Right. And that's always my attitude is, Jen, when we were working early together, it's what can I do to help, early on or more. It didn't matter. It's what can I do to help, and build those relationships. And it's not because you're hoping to get something on the other side. I'm just saying you will. You absolutely just will.
Right.
Because this is a relationship game. Now in college athletics, I think even more than ever, especially as you start climbing, like when you get towards the top, assistant ADs, senior associate ADs, they move around.
Yeah.
Right. There's a lot of movement. And so there's two options. Like with SIDEARM, if we had a bad relationship with an AD and then they moved, they're not going to use us at the next school, right? So instead of just losing one school, we've now lost two. And their disciples aren't going to lose us. And so then all of a sudden, instead of we lost 2, we lost 4 or 8. The opposite of that is building on those relationships to say, when they move from one school to another or one program to another, they want to bring you with them.
Yeah.
And that has been really the key to SIDEARM success, are those relationships. And that's how we got in business with the NCAA, because the person from the college football playoff left college football playoff, went to the NCAA, and then we did a multi-year deal with the NCAA and kept our relationship with college football playoff. So I can't stress enough the importance of those, and then nurturing those. And that's hard, right? Like we look at Facebook, we look at LinkedIn. We've got thousands of supposed friends on Facebook. We have many thousand connections on LinkedIn. And so I think the question becomes how, right? How do you nurture relationships in 2024 and beyond? And I think it's being present would be my number one thing. And, my wife would always say, like, gosh, why do you have to go to the women's game? Or why do you have no role at this exhibition game? Why are you going? And I would always say, Jennifer, like those women games and the exhibition games are the best times to actually interact with people.
Yeah.
To build the men's games, like it's stressful, it's intense, it's nobody wants to talk, everyone's got a job to do. And I'm not sure she ever understood it, but to me that was critical. And it's the same of, I want to show up at industry events. Right. And every industry event, I can't travel enough because I just want to be there, and I want to be hanging out, and I just want to be, it's just those quick interactions. That's all it takes, is a quick human interaction to do something. And, so that to me has been a success of mine. It's genuine. I love it. Now, don't get me wrong. I love going to these events. I love being with people. I love people in general. But it is always one of the challenges. I say there's only so many lunches you can have. There's only so many emails you can send.
There's only so much time in a day.
There is.
Do it all, so.
There is. But, when you go out to the Final Four, I probably have 150 plus interactions in 2 days. Right. I mean, meaningful interactions. And each one of those might only been a minute, 2 minutes. Some of them are groups. Right. You can 10 of them together and like, wow, you just got this done. I love it. It's energizing. You're learning. And at the same time, you're building those relationships. And I don't think people realize how valuable that really is. And, this Zoom and Teams and all that stuff, it's the same way I say, show up to the office. Yeah. Right. Again, forgive me, I'm the 51-year-old old guy that's like with the rake, get off my lawn. I'm saying, get in my office, right? Come to work. And look, I've got COOs and other folks that are like, well, Jeff, get with the times. It's 2025. But there is a difference for those that show up. that are willing to build that relationship and be seen. And I think it's both sides. So it wasn't my tip, right? My tip wasn't go to work, but my tip is building relationships.
Yeah.
Those relationships don't necessarily have to be external. They can be internal.
Right.
And how did again, sorry, just keep going back to Syracuse, but how does John Wildhack know that you're there every day? Because he passes you in the hallway.
Sees you. Right. Exactly.
Right. He sees you. And if it's not John, it's Herm Fraser. It's somebody knows that you are showing up, that you're coming to the games, even if you don't have a role to play. Right. And to me, look, you talked about at the front end of how, my career has now shifted and I'm now at the university, but you know how many relationships I've built over 28 years with board of trustee members and higher ups at the university. And a lot of it was based upon being present at an athletic event, and having a conversation and getting to know a person and their husband or their wife or their partner, getting to know their children. It doesn't mean I remember every name, right? It doesn't. That's hard, but it does mean that, I recognize folks. I remember folks. I know who they are, what they're doing, the impact they have on the community. And sometimes just a simple, thank you, a quick, that's all it is.
Yeah.
Build on those relationships. And I'm telling you again, I don't know other industries, so I can't tell you is the telecom industry like this or is the entertainment industry like this? I don't know, but I can promise you college sports is like this.
Yeah.
Gosh, Jeff, that is so perfect. That's so perfect. All right. Last big question. So, what do you know now that you wish you knew then? So when you first started, what do you wish you knew?
Yeah, there's a lot, Jen, right? I was just like fish out of water.
I think we all were, though. I think we all were. That's how you start,
It is. It is hard to start.
That naive, excitement of not knowing what's laying ahead. So
That's right. But I think the biggest one is financial literacy. Because at the end of the day, college sports and probably almost anything you're doing, even if it's a nonprofit, it's revenue driven, right? Mm-hmm. Now, whether that revenue is dropping to the bottom line or getting, paid for it in terms of a nonprofit or going elsewhere, it doesn't really matter. But I really didn't have it's not that I couldn't do 1 + 1 = 2. It's not that I didn't know I was growing because my bank account was going up. It's not that I didn't realize how much I was invoicing. But I really didn't have an idea on how to forecast the future, on how to kind of really look at a profit and loss statement. I really didn't have the idea to look at modeling out an opportunity, right? Like, hey, if we acquired this company, what is it like? I don't know, we'll get bigger. That probably isn't the right answer.
That's the way I would look at it. I'd be like, there's more people.
when Learfield first acquired me, and look, this was 14 years into me starting the company.
Yeah.
I still didn't have the appreciation on the depth of financial modeling to the point when they're like, all right, Jeff, we're going to acquire you and we got to look at, your 3-year outlook and how much you're going to make. And my answer was like, well, how much do you want me to make? And then I'll go make that. Right. And they're like, well, that's not really a model. And I was like, oh, but we can do it. Right. And I think, also being it's not just revenue, it's being super cognizant of expenses.
Yeah.
And understanding, how those are going to grow and affect margin. And, so all this financial literacy, EBITDA, margin, cash flow, what it means if we're going to outsource, insource, offshore, nearshore, in terms of development. These were things that, man, I had to learn along the way.
Yeah.
And I'll just to embarrass myself, one of the first boards I sat on, I was on the board for Jawonio, which is a local school here in Syracuse.
Yep.
And my kids had gone there and I was I owned a company and they're like, be on the board. I was like, great. And they put me on the financial committee. And I was like, all right, cool. I'm on the financial committee. I run a company. And I remember looking at the P&L and I was like, I have really no idea what I'm looking at, but I'm like, well, your credit card processing fees are pretty high. Have you thought about using a different credit card processor? And they're like, Jeff, that would save us like $1,000 a year. And I'm like, great, but $1,000. And I was like, man, what an idiot of not understanding like how to look at something and see something, like significant versus something insignificant. And that took time, Jen and Morey. And I think it's also, students who I teach and mentor, it's the biggest roadblock and obstacle that I see for them. There's such blinders on of we're just going to make all this revenue and we're not going to have any expense.
Yeah.
And it's so far from the truth. And I think the closer you can get to modeling and honestly even becoming an expert in Excel of being able to really manipulate data, that's going to help you. So now when you start plugging in, all right, I've got this relationship, so I've got the attention with somebody, I understand the industry, I understand my profession, and now I'm actually going to model something out to be able to show, right, like what this can do. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to show this to the athletic director, but I might show it to my boss and be like, what do you think of this crazy idea? Now you're adding these all together and you've created real value.
Yeah. Well, great, Jeff, this was awesome. We cannot thank you enough just to get your knowledge and to your experience and just hear some of the stories have been awesome. So absolute thank you. Thank you for being with us today.
Yeah,
thank you for having me today.
We're lucky to have the relationship with you. So
yeah, we're super lucky.
Thank you for all that you've done for us. And it's been great to work with you all of these years and hopefully to continue to work with you.
It has been a blast and watching the two of you grow and change your last name, Jen, and everything that's happened. It's been a lot of fun. But, those early days were equally fun, right?
Yeah.
It really was.
Oh,
they were a blast and we learned together.
We did.
Absolutely.
It was great. We have so many good memories, Jeff.
Sure
many
do.
good memories. But hey, thank you so much. This is awesome. So
my
great.
pleasure.
Yes. All right.
Everyone out there in podcast world, we hope that you follow us, subscribe, and we'll see you in our next episode.
Bye.
If you like the 5 Tips and Tricks podcast, make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. You can rate and review us, including questions that may be answered on future episodes. The 5 Tips and Tricks podcast for careers in athletics is part of Athletic Career Consulting. Check us out at www.athcareer.com. Don't forget to follow and like us on your top social media platforms.